Hi, everyone. So today I'm teaching you how to characterize something based on details from the text. So I'm going to model. My model question is very similar to your question. So the only difference is the page numbers. I'm answering the same question as you, but from page 38, while you are going to be focusing on page 9. As I model this skill, jot down the steps I take and the questions I ask myself to locate key details in order to characterize. So I'm going to page 38. My first step is to read the question carefully and figure out what it's asking me. So you read the question carefully to figure out what you need to look for. That is the first step. So my question is, how does Alvarez characterize the expectations for women in America? So I know I'm looking for expectations for women in America, and what details does Alvarez use to show these expectations? So I'm going to go from the beginning of 38 and I'm going to read it. So my second step is I'm going to read and I'm going to look for what the question is asking me to find, which is those beauty expectations. Their voices rang with false cheer. You could hear, not far off, years of high school cheerleading, pom-poms, bleachers full of moon-eyed boys, and moms on phones, signing them up for all manner of lessons and making dentist appointments. There they stood, 50 puzzle pieces forming the pretty face of America. Okay, here's something about American Beauty. Apparently it's pretty. It has to be a pretty face. So we thought, though most of the color had been left out, except for one or possibly two light-skinned black girls. So here I'm thinking to myself, if I'm looking for American standards of beauty, and here we have a beauty pageant, and most of the girls are not dark or have any color to their skin except for one, possibly two light-skinned black girls, that tells me that American beauty standards at the time were very white-centric, meaning mostly people appreciated how white people looked. If there was a Hispanic, she usually looked all American, and only the last name, Lopez or Rodriguez, often mispronounced, showed a trace of a great-grandfather with a dark curled mustache and a sombrero charging the Alamo. During the initial roll call, what most amazed us was that some contestants were ever picked in the first place. There were homely girls with cross-eyed smiles or chipmunk cheeks. My mother would inevitably shake her head and say, "The truth is, these Americans believe in democracy, even in looks." Okay, so I read where I was supposed to read, and I noticed one thing. So let's go back to my question. How does Alvarez characterize the expectations for women in America? Okay, and I need to follow some steps. So first, I read the question to find out what I needed to look for. Second, I read and I looked for what the question was asking me to find. Now, I'm going to make an inference about the evidence that I found. So the evidence I found was, there they stood, 50 puzzle pieces forming the pretty face of America, so we thought, though most of the color had been left out, except for one or possibly two light-skinned black girls. If there was a Hispanic, she usually looked all-American, and only the last name, Lopez or Rodriguez, often mispronounced, showed a trace of a great-great-grandfather with a dark curled mustache and a sombrero charging the Alamo. So this evidence tells me a few things. So first, I'm going to make an inference based on what I already know and the evidence in front of me. I know that beauty pageants are supposed to celebrate the most beautiful people, and this is an American beauty pageant, so I know that this is going to give me a pretty accurate idea of what American beauty was like. But I find out that in this pageant, The contestants are mostly the same color, except for one or two, maybe, light-skinned black girls. And Hispanic girls did not look Hispanic. They look all American. So from this, I can infer. So I'm going to make my inference now. My inference is that American Beauty was revolved around white people. That is my inference. Now, I'm going to draw a conclusion about the topic of the question. So, my question was, how does Alvarez characterize the expectations for women in America? Here's how I'm going to answer. I am going to answer, and you guys can hear my dogs, that's okay. I am going to answer by saying Alvarez characterizes American Beauty as white and colorless. I should put colorless in quotes because I believe that is her word. Let me check to make sure. No, she says most of the color had been left out. So I'm going to change my quote to, and white and as the color being left out. This shows that mostly white girls' beauty was celebrated, where girls who were seen as ethnic were not seen as beautiful in America compared to American girls. So, the 4 steps I took to get to this answer from this question. First, I just read my question. Then, I decided to read the text looking for what the question was asking for, talking about the expectations for women in America. And then it talks about how in the beauty pageant, everyone was white. So, my third step was to make an inference about the evidence that I find. The evidence that I found was that no women of color or very prominent women of color were in the beauty pageant. So that tells me that America didn't really celebrate women of color. My last step was to connect it back to my prompt and draw a conclusion about the topic of the question. How does Alvarez characterize the expectations of women in America? So I'm going to use this and turn it into a sentence. Alvarez characterizes the expectations for women in America as, and let's see, white and as the color being left out. This shows that mostly white girls' beauty was celebrated, where girls who were seen as ethnic were not seen as beautiful in America. Oops. Compared to American girls. American girls is in quotes because obviously America does not have one color of beauty, and beauty does not have a color. This is obviously a very flawed idea. So I'm not going to do that. We're going to stamp it. Here are the 4 steps I took. I read the question. I looked for what the question was asking. I made an inference based on my evidence, and then I connected my inference to answer the question. I hope this helps you guys when it comes time for you guys to answer your 2 questions. How exciting. All right, that's a wrap for me. You guys are now going to go in breakout rooms and answer what steps did I take to answer the question? And you might be called on, so make sure you have an answer at the end of breakout rooms. Bye, guys.